Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. First of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is Jeannie McCarrigan, and I am the mayor of Scottsbluff. And tonight is one of the first of 3 town hall meetings that we're going to hold in order to provide some education to the community members on the proposed Scottsbluff Aquatics facility, and then also we are asking for feedback. Second, I'm going to briefly touch on the agenda. First, we're going to talk about the current state of aquatics, which includes the status of current community facilities and community aquatic needs. Second is going to be the funding, which is LB 357, sales tax as a potential funding tool. Third is going to be the community survey. We're going to show the results of the community survey that many of you may have participated in March of 2022. Fourth is the proposed aquatic center based on funding and feedback, what the proposed components will be, and some brief renderings. And then fifth, we're going to ask for some public feedback. We're going to ask you to let us know your thoughts on the proposed aquatic center. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Conrad Bostrom. He's our Chief Executive Officer for the YMCA.
Thank you, Jeannie. Welcome, everyone. It's fun to be here. I've never had a bad meeting in this room. It's always good things that go on in this room. So happy to be here. I have the honor to get to talk to you a little bit about some things that you maybe already know. Maybe you'll get a little bit more specific information. But we're going to talk about kind of the 3 primary pools we have in Scottsbluff and kind of the state of those primary pools. So we're going to talk about the Westmore Water Park, the Garrison City Pool, the indoor pool at our YMCA, the Splash Arena, therapy pool at the YMCA, and the therapy pool at Regional West Medical Center. The newest pool in this entire facility, back up there just a little bit. Yeah, we can't get too far ahead of ourselves. But, we talk about all the different elements. The newest pool we have is the one at Scottsbluff YMCA, completed in 1987. You do the math, that's still pretty old. It's actually, people don't realize it, but the pool existing now sits inside of the old pool shell. It literally does. And it is not regulation length, and never will be, and can't ever will be. 2 years ago, when we started swim team coming to the Y, the seniors had to walk around the inside track around from the old Y underneath the old pool. It was actually kind of exciting, probably dangerous, and I probably shouldn't say that at a school meeting. But at any rate, all of these pools have their unique qualities, their unique problems, and really don't meet the need of aquatics in the community as we anticipate not only current need but future need. Now I've got a little bit of an illustration to give you a little bit of a feel for that. So now you can click. All right, this is the YMCA pool. All right, this is a picture of me between haircuts. And the YMCA pool is functional. And this is what I've learned as I've aged. You can still be functional, but you cannot be as purposeful or as complete as you once were. Our YMCA pool can never be a competitive pool. It can never house an event. No matter what we do with our pool, no matter what amount of money we spend on it, it can't change those facts. When I was 50 years old, believe it or not, I could run a 6-minute mile and I could do it for a 5K, John Marshall. Even did it for almost a half marathon one time. I can't do that now. Things have changed. Hip replacement, a few other things. But I'm still functional, but I'm not entirely practical. Now we'll switch to the next screen. Here is my illustration of the Splash Arena. The Splash Arena just costs too much to operate. That looks a little bit like Liz, don't you think? And I think, and it's just costs way too much money to run for an 8-week, 9-week cycle. And the older it gets and the more exposure it has to the elements, the longer this takes. It is hundreds of thousands of dollars to operate this pool, maintain this pool, and it will continue to be that. And again, does it meet the needs of the community? Yes, it has a recreational element. Yes, it has an outdoor element. Does it have a competitive pool where swimmers can train year-round? Does it have the ability to expand to that without major cost and expense? And I believe the answer is no. And then the last slide, well, this is splash. It's dead right now. Now, it could be resurrected, right? It could be. For $8 to $10 million, possibly. We don't even know if that's the right figure. Would it have and it could be a competitive pool again. And maybe that will be what takes place at some point in time if we don't build a new aquatic center. However, will it ever have the recreational elements that we want? Could it ever have? Could it ever have the community appeal that we anticipate is needed and that we would desire for our community and for quality of life? So that's the status of the pools in our community. And it is now my privilege to introduce Liz Lutzenhauser. She is the finance director for City of Scottsbluff and co-interim city manager.
Hi, everybody. So how are we going to pay for the pool? That's a very popular question. So there will be a half-cent sales tax initiative on the ballot in November in the general election. And I apologize, I don't know that I'm going to follow the slides very well, but so there is going to be the opportunity to vote for an additional half-cent sales tax this November in the general election. And that sales tax will be in addition to the existing sales tax that we already have in place, which is 1.5% for the city of Scottsbluff. So when you go purchase items, currently the combined sales tax is 7%, and this will cause it to go to 7.5%. Of that 7%, 5.5% goes to the state of Nebraska, and currently 1.5 cents of that would come to the city of Scottsbluff. So this would be an additional half cent that would come to the city of Scottsbluff. If this initiative does pass, how the city would pay for the swimming pool is we would issue bonds for the swimming pool. And the revenue stream from this additional half-cent sales tax would be used to pay those bonds off over a specified period of time. Right now, the current cost estimates for this aquatics facility are approximately $15 million, and we would issue the bonds for that amount and then pay them off over time. We're thinking, ideally, we would like to get those paid off in 10 to 13 years. So by 2034 to 2037 is when this additional half-cent sales tax would sunset if it does pass. The sales tax, it would be exactly the same as the existing sales tax. It's charged on vehicle purchases, hotel rooms, materials, supplies. Groceries are not subject to sales tax. Another question, the tax dollars that are received on the half-cent sales tax initiative per the specific statute that these fall under can only be used for capital improvements. So we cannot use these sales tax dollars for any operational costs of the aquatics facility or for the city of Scottsbluff itself. So these are only for capital improvements. And if this sales tax initiative does pass, we would use these dollars to construct an aquatics facility. And the only other issue out there is how does the city intend to cover the costs of the operational expenses? And that's going to be explained a little bit more in detail, but the idea is that there's community partnerships, there's usage agreements, and then there's also user fees, and then there's also going to be some value-added amenities that are a part of this aquatics facility that I believe Dave's going to talk about later that would be potential additional revenue streams. So that's all I have. I will turn it over to Dr. Andrew Dick. He's going to talk about the splash.
Thank you, Liz. As Liz mentioned, my name is Andrew Dick, and I have the privilege of serving as the superintendent of schools for Scottsbluff. The slide I get to talk to you about this evening is about the question about why don't we just renovate the existing splash facility. Projected cost to renovate the existing splash arena would be in the area of $7 million. And even at $7 million, that would still just make it an operational pool where we would lack the recreational enhancements that could be provided with a new aquatics center. The current diving well at the splash arena would have to be dug deeper in order to allow for diving there, which would be an added cost on top of that $7 million. The other question some may say is, why don't you just use your LB 357 funds to renovate the splash arena? Because the splash is on school property, we're not able to use LB 357 funds to renovate that facility. So those are the two main driving factors into the reason why we would not take the money and look to revamp the splash facility. The other thing that I think it's important for people to realize is that you'd be hard pressed to find a school district our size or smaller, and even slightly larger, that is in the business of maintaining and operating on a daily basis a pool facility. That would take a considerable amount of funds away from our general fund, which then is taking funds away from the most important work we do, which is educating our children. I'm now going to turn it over to Zach Karp, co-chair of the Say Yes for Scottsbluff Aquatics Committee.
Thanks, Andrew. And before we get into this, I wonder if we could back up to that community partners slide that's right there. Oops. Yep. I just want to talk a little bit about this. It's something that our group, our citizen-led group, Vote Yes for Scottsbluff Aquatics, has been working on for some time, and that's involving a number of community partners in a project like this. I think we all understand that there's a lot of costs associated with an aquatic facility, and so it's really a facility where the community would need to come together. And so these are the community partners that have been working together. Primarily, the city of Scottsbluff, Scottsbluff Public Schools, and the YMCA. Those are definitely our three key community partners. But all of the other community partners on this slide as well, WNCC, the city of Gering Public Schools, the Scottsbluff County and Regional West, have also continually been a part of this conversation of what are the features that a facility like this would need to have? How do we fund the operations of it? How do we meet the needs of our constituencies? And so I did want to just mention that this is another group that we've gathered input from throughout the process. And I have the privilege of presenting the results of our public input survey on Scottsbluff Aquatics, and this was distributed to the community in a variety of ways. It was sent out by email, it was sent out by the city, the YMCA, Scottsbluff Public Schools, Star Herald put it out, KNDB put it out. It was all over the place, and we had about 1,000 responses to it from a very good variety of individuals that I'm going to share with you in a moment. If you do want these full results, as you can tell, we're going through these slides quickly because we want this meeting to be about your feedback and your questions. But if you do want this information, these details, please come up to me afterwards. I'd be happy to get you the full results of the survey. This input process is still happening, and which I think is the most exciting part about it, is that everybody's still listening about what people want to see in this facility. So we had 972 total respondents to our survey. You can see the breakdown here, how that breaks down between residents of Scottsbluff, which is the populace that's going to face the ballot question, and kind of this broader group of Gering residents and Scottsbluff County residents, that when you think about all of the retail sales that flow through the city of Scottsbluff, the sales tax is collected obviously from more than just residents of Scottsbluff. So it's very important that that we gather that input from others, since the source of that revenue will come from a significant amount of it will be paid from residents of outside the city. You can see that we have age range of our participants, which was very important because we're trying to design a facility that's not just for kids, it's not just for adults, it's not just for senior citizens, it's for the entire part of the population. And we also included in our survey information about household size and YMCA members, again, to make sure that we were getting a broad representation of community input in that survey. So what did the survey results tell us about what features were most appealing? And you can see the number one response from both in Scottsbluff and outside of Scottsbluff residents was programs and services. What kind of programs and services can we see at an aquatics facility of this nature? Number two, availability, access to it. Obviously, we're talking about a public facility that's available for public access, not a private facility. Although we do anticipate certain private entities being able to use that facility for a fee. But we're talking about a facility that's owned by the city of Scottsbluff that would have public access. And then you can see at the bottom of this slide information about who's using which pools, which is very similar results there. So then we asked our survey respondents, which of the aquatic center in the community do you use? Well, a lot of people, you can see, are using the YMCA indoor pool, a lot of people using the Westmore pool, and a lot of people using the Gering pool, which again is one of our potential community partners here, and you can see the other pools identified. So what statement best represents how the existing aquatic centers meet your household's needs? You can see it meets primarily some of the needs of our existing facilities. And so it's clear that our respondents want to see more out of a future aquatics center. And then we dive into what are the reasons that you are not using the local aquatic center. So you can see the number one response from Scottsbluff residents is it's too crowded. And that's actually one of the issues that's come up consistently in our feedback process and our design process is capacity of the Westmore facility. There's days during the periods when it's open when they can't take any more kids. And so it's at its maximum capacity. So we're looking at making sure that's incorporated into this. Then on the right side of this slide, you can see all respondents just seeing facilities that don't meet some of the needs that they see. And so we've gathered some of that information. So we asked, what are the various recreation-related components that you'd want to see in an aquatic center? And you can see the 9 top results here. I think you'll understand that if we try to design a facility that has absolutely everything, you might reach some budget limitations. But you're going to see in just a little bit from the next presentation that we've incorporated the top 6 responses here into a potential design of an aquatic center facility. When you think about not from a recreation component, but from a safety and exercise component, what are the features that the population wants to see? Lap pool, competition pool, diving boards, instructional pool. All 3 of these would be incorporated into our current proposed design. So that's also a very important component of the feedback. When you look at the top 3 amenities that we see desired by household, very consistent results here. Lap pool, competition pool, water slide, and a therapy pool. All 3 of those, because of that feedback that we've received, we look to incorporate that into a potential facility. And then how frequently would people use the facility was a question that we asked from Scottsbluff and outside residents. Very similar responses here. People indicated they use it several times a week. I think it's important to recognize that one of the significant features that we'd be talking about with this facility versus some other facilities, specifically some of the outdoor facilities, is this would be a year-round facility, not just one that's open for 8 weeks or 12 weeks. It's open year-round. Which we think would be an important part of making it available and addressing those availability needs of the community. In your opinion, was the next question that we asked, how important is it for the city of Scottsbluff and their community partners to develop a new aquatic center? You can see in the top 2 results on this, extremely important and very important, that over 80% of our respondents indicated that it was either extremely important or very important. So you can see that from our 1,000 responses that we received, we've got very strong encouragement to continue down the path that we're on. And speaking of that path that we're on, I'm very excited to now turn the presentation over to Dave Schaff, who's the city engineer for the city of Scottsbluff, to present just one possible design and features based on the feedback that we've received so far. Dave?
Thanks, Zach. I guess my part of the presentation gets to be a little bit more fun than listening about how the funding mechanism comes about. And I guess I want to reiterate the fact that these are all conceptual plans and that as we get and gain additional public input, that these concepts will change and will evolve based off of the input that we receive from everybody involved in not only this one, but other future town hall meetings. So, the first part of the project I'd like to talk a little bit about first is the location. This has been a very difficult process to, as you know, there's a lot of different places that this facility like this can go. But the site that has been selected was based on a community-based process and some major components that came into that site selection was the accessibility for multiple arterials. I think it's very important to be able to easily access this facility to make during swim competitions or even during some of the busier hours, be able to get in and out easily and make it accessible is one major component for what we looked at. Another one was finding a site that was large enough to accommodate not only the facility, but a lot of the site components of the facility, parking, easy access to some of these city utilities to keep the budget within reason as we go forth with this site. And then also working in unison with some of the existing facilities and the organizations that are going to be able to use and go to this facility and be the major users of the site. So with that, we've come up with a design team. We have BRS Architecture out of Denver as the lead architect for the project, and then Lamper and Earson out of Kansas City, which is formerly Larkin Aquatics. The design team has had multiple really favorable projects throughout the country, and they are very good at what they do, and so we're really excited to have them as part of the project team as we move forward with some of the evaluations that we do. So with that, as we talked a lot about some of the surveys and some of the things that we are looking at for a facility like this, we've come up with a conceptual floor plan. I guess it's important to recognize that the conceptual floor plan is based off of the budget that we feel like we can generate based off of the tax initiative, as well as one of the biggest conversations we've had through this process is making sure we put together a process that we can afford the O&M through time. All of the community partners that are here today will openly recognize that the cost of having a facility like this is a major burden on an annual basis. And so making sure that we evaluate these facilities and look at components that we're going to put into not only can generate revenue, but we can afford over time and make sure that that we can operate it and maintain it over a long period of time. We would expect a facility like this to have a lifespan of roughly anywhere between 30 or 40 years, as long as it was taken care of and operated appropriately. So with the next one, we'll focus specifically on some of the aquatics only. Based off of the budget and the O&M costs, we've come up with a concept that would look at potentially 3 components. We would look at the competition pool separate from the recreation pool, which would also be separate from a slide or more of a fun aspect of the facility as well. And the reason we do that is because we can look at the operation of the facility, and we'd be able to have portions of the pool open without as much of the O&M component as if we were to have one large pool and have to keep the lifeguards on staff and everything open from that perspective. So being able to break it down into separate components really helps with the operation and maintenance of the facility. So with the competition pool, a lot of people think a competition pool is looking at as a pool that would only help with the high school swim team or some of the master's programs. One of the things that we're looking at heavily is with the programming of the competition pool to really be able to integrate some of the items that were included as part of the community survey. One of the kind of the neat and unique comments that we got was having a ninja site. So a lot of you have seen like the American Ninja Warriors. They have a new facility that actually retracts from the ceiling, and it provides a space within the competition pool that you can do rope swings, you can do hoop swims, you can do a lot of different things with it that has become really, really popular throughout the country. And so being able to integrate that into the competition pool with some other options such as like the water aerobics, the deep water training for scuba diving, as well as some of the lifeguard training, and then also some of the learn to swim pieces of the competition pool. We're really focusing on being able to integrate some of those things into the competition pool away from the recreational side, so it's a little bit more controlled and can provide there again a lot more revenue towards the facility to help the O&M costs for it. So that's the competition pool. The leisure pool or the recreational pool would focus a lot more on some of the younger kids and some of the more fun aspects of going to swimming. We recognize that that is probably one of the major uses of a swimming pool, so it's a little bit more of a water park feel. So some of that would include the zero depth, the beach entry for the younger kids with the play area. We'd be able to have in the middle of that, it's not necessarily a more traditional lazy river, but something within the recreational pool that would provide some a lazy river aspect that you could do your walking. You could also do your tubing. You could do that kind of stuff. It wouldn't be a large one that would go around the whole facility, but you could design that and get it within the recreational pool itself. And then also some of the therapy aspects of a recreational pool that would be kind of a diversity aspect of the recreation side that you could really integrate a lot of these types of components into it. The water would be a little bit warmer than the competition pool, which would make it a lot more comfortable for the kids, as well as the therapy and then just the recreational side of things. So the overall component of the aquatic center, we're really trying to focus on a family-focused facility that could be multifaceted for a lot of different revenue components of an aquatic center that we don't currently have. So it'd really be able to generate funds from tourism as well as local components to look at some of maybe the junior high school, college age people that are here now that they would get more maybe involved with the aquatic side of things. And that's been kind of one of the main focuses for the Aquatic Center itself. So I think with that kind of completes that part of it. I'm going to turn it back over to Zach, and he's going to take over the Q&A portion of it.
Thanks, Dave. And I know we went through that very quickly, and the reason that we did is because we want to have a lot of time here for any questions and or comments. And during this section, we can rewind to a slide if there's a certain slide that you want to ask a question about. We are streaming this online through Facebook and YouTube, so it is being recorded. So if you do throw a tomato, make sure it hits the presenter right here square so we can get a viral video out of it. But and what we're going to do with the question and answer session is we're just going to have whoever's most qualified to answer that come up. So it might be a different person based on your question. And we have had 2 questions already come up really consistently in some emails and things. And so just to start that out, kind of want to answer those questions. And one of those questions was, is this, which kind of was answered by Dave's presentation, but, are we looking at an indoor facility, an outdoor facility? Primarily, the features that we're looking at incorporate indoor features. However, we're looking at incorporating some outdoor capabilities to the facility, whether that's the ability to open up sections of it to the outside or somehow create that outdoor experience for certain parts of it. But we're very focused on a facility that's available year-round, not 8 weeks, not 12 weeks, 52 weeks, because that's the most consistent feedback that we have is that we don't have these aquatics facilities available for enough time during the year. And the second question that we consistently get is for Liz, I think, with the city, and that is what's going to happen to the Westmore Pool if this aquatics center happens?
So at this time, we don't have any intention of continuing to operate the Westmore Pool if this aquatics facility is constructed. The Westmore Pool, it's 20 years old, and maybe for a swimming pool that isn't necessarily as long of a life as that you would like to see, but there are significant repairs that need to be made, and we're just not willing to keep reinvesting in that swimming pool. The size is not great, and the capacity issues are an ongoing struggle, and it's just, there's a lot of limitations there, and we just don't feel that it's a good financial investment to continue investing in that particular facility. We will keep it open until a replacement facility is constructed, so it's not something that's going to be closed this summer or anything like that, but we do not intend to keep that open.
Thanks, Liz. So those are the 2 most common questions that we've gotten. Happy to take any questions, feedback, comments. Yes, ma'am. Kristen. And could you stand up, please, Kristen?
Would the YMCA use this as a primary pool for programs? And if so, what would the YMCA pool's purpose be? Would it go away? Would it stay there? How does the YMCA interact with the aquatics center?
So I'm going to repeat the question. Conrad's going to answer that. But for our people online, just so everybody here knows, they would not have been able to hear that question, although I heard it, Kristen. And that is a question for the YMCA in terms of would they use this facility for their primary pool and their programming, and how would that be incorporated into the YMCA pool? Did I understand the question right?
Yeah, and what would happen to theirs?
And what would happen to our existing aquatic facility at the YMCA?
Great question. Thank you, Kristen. If this new facility was built, we would close our lap pool. That is the oldest pool and the pool that has the most issues with it. And our programming would be done at this facility. There would be a community membership. We anticipate that Y members would have a discounted rate or an agreed upon rate or something and be able to use this new facility. It's our intention that the YMCA would operate this new facility using our staff and our programs and be the operating partner. However, we anticipate at this time that our therapy pool would stay open and that we would maintain it. It has a senior element to it function and also a younger preschool type element to it, or a younger kid element. It's a good learning pool and a warmer pool. And it is newer. We are finding that it has some issues too that we're having to address fairly immediately that could be significant. We anticipate closing the lap pool, using the new facility, running the new facility, and at this time maintaining the therapy pool. And don't even get me started on the hot tub. Don't even get me started.
Thanks, Conrad. Great question. What's another question or comment? Yes, ma'am. Capacity of the new pool is the question. Does Dave know the answer to that question exactly or approximately?
So the capacity of the new pool will vary slightly based off of what the final design looks like. Right now, we are looking at trying to get around that 600 number. But it kind of depends on how you look at it, whether you're going to have the capacity of the competition pool along with the recreation pool, or if you want to look at them separately, because they will operate separately and will operate differently. So the overall concept right now is we're trying to push for that 600 number, but recognize again that this won't be an 6-week or an 8-week facility. It'll be a year-round facility, so we wouldn't expect the major demand that we see for the summer pool at, say, the Westmore as we see now. So,
How much bigger is that capacity than
right now, the Westmore capacity is roughly 450, maybe a slightly less. So it'll be a little bit bigger, and again, based off of programming and how they function and operate the two pools separate. So,
Another great question. Questions, comments? Yes, sir.
Of the sites that you inspected or looked at, what are they? I mean, obviously, other than the places you talked about.
Sure. You want me to talk about that? Or? Okay. So the question was about the site selection process, and could you back up to it's a few slides back. That one. Oh, sorry. Yep, that one. So actually the YMCA began that process in 2018, independently of the city's process. And we actually looked at 13 different sites in Scottsbluff and Gehring, so really throughout our community. And we had a group of citizens that just basically kept honing that down, until we had 2 or 3 sites that were basically our finalists. And we've provided that information to the city. And this site that the city has identified was one in our final group. So this is a site that we've ended up with, and you can kind of see some of the different components of that. And I can tell you that big factors in that are trying to arrive at a location that's convenient in terms of walkability and transportation for the vast majority of people. And I think everybody would understand we're not going to find a location that everybody loves because it's not right next door to them. But this location was determined to be the most viable based on the available locations. Anything you want to add to that? Okay. Kristen.
Does that location allow for access for events, for being able to get people in and out?
Yeah.
Just because of the congestion of softball fields there, school there, with other things going on, is the traffic an issue, or have they?
You bet.
Engineers agree that it works that way?
Yeah, so the question is related to ingress, egress from this particular site. How does that work? How's traffic going to be dealt with, especially with relation to larger special events? And so that would be a Dave Schaff question.
thanks, Chris. That's a great question, and it is one of the major issues that we looked at when we were identifying all the sites. This particular site will have, although not direct access to 27th Street, it's available through 27th Street, through some of the parking areas, through the old Albertsons, and you guys know the space, I would expect. It also provides space access off of Avenue B directly as well. At one time, and I think we'll continue to look at and evaluate the possibility of adding as a through street through to the high school, which would working that that access by the Armory and through the 23 Club is a challenge, and it's going to require some additional funds and some more expense. It's just not possible right now, but we will continue to look at that, and if that becomes a viable option, that's something that the city is definitely looking at trying to accommodate. So.
Yes, Melissa.
From the live stream, we had a question. In the competition pool design, will there be seating in the facility?
Okay, so we have a question from our live stream, which we appreciate you online for being engaged on that. And the question is, does the competition pool have spectator seating? Will it have spectator seating available? I think this will be a short answer.
Yes, no. There is, one of the things with, as part of the design team, we do have, they have a lot of experience with that. And with a school of our size and with the competitions that we would expect to have, their recommendation is anywhere between 350 and 450 seats available. How that is incorporated in the concept, you can see it on the bottom of the competition pool. Whether it stays as part of the finished floor of the pool space itself or whether it becomes an elevated space. Again, it'll be based off of some of the budget constraints that we see, but yeah, it is somewhere between 350 and 450 for permanent seating.
Perfect time for me to give a shout out to Melissa Price, who is giving of her time to help us out with our technical things tonight. So thank you, Melissa, for your help. Other questions or comments? These are great. Yes, sir.
As far as parking at the facility, do you have parking available around the site? Are you going to use Albertson's parking lot, or how is that all going to work in the situation?
Great. Yep. Thanks for that question. So the questions about parking at the facility and what's the availability there? Will we be using the existing Albertson's parking or old Albertson store parking that's in that area? Another Dave question. Keep the Dave questions coming.
Yes, there will be. We'll have to add parking to this particular site. This site, with the number of acres that's available for the facility, we can accommodate plenty of parking, which is, again, one of the key site selections and why this became a popular space. So yeah, we'll have plenty of parking. We will have to add it. We've talked with Albertsons on some aspects of how to incorporate this facility into their site, but I think everybody at this time really agrees that it needs to be a standalone facility with adequate parking for all of the components of the site design. So.
And I do want to mention too, that because I know another component of the siting, and you see it on there, is walking distance to the school facilities and also to the pathway project, which goes right through this area. And I'm sure we've all seen a lot of people walking on that area. So, and a lot of people walk to the current pools currently, especially, of course, younger people that can't drive or aren't supposed to. So, next question or comment? Yes, sir.
Have you guys done a soil sample survey on the site and or groundwater?
Question is related to a soil sample or survey on the site.
We should just cut the distance. Make it a lot easier.
Being the local engineers, we've got a lot of experience with that particular area. Yeah, we have quite a few soil borings in the area. We haven't done them for this project specifically as of yet, but we do have pretty significant knowledge based off of the Albertsons facility as well as some like the Scooters facility, work that we've done on the Scottsbluff Drain. I think we're pretty well versed in the area and as well as that site specific. I think one of the biggest questions, not only soil borings, is also groundwater and how that is going to play into the design of the space. Right now, the groundwater, it'll vary in that location anywhere between a depth of about 11 feet to anywhere to around 8 feet below the ground surface. The pool design, whether we elevate it slightly to keep it out of the groundwater or we accommodate it in the design to where we can underpin the bowls, it really is not going to be an issue with the site design and the facility. And the reason I can say that confidently also is that we just recently went and visited the Sheridan pool up in Sheridan, Wyoming, and they just completed that one right before COVID, believe it or not. And the location that they put theirs is right over the top of, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Sheridan, but they actually rerouted the river through town. And their facility is right over where the river used to stand. And the groundwater at that location is at 3 feet. And the facility that they've built versus what we are proposing from a conceptual stance are very, very similar. So it can be done. It does add some expense, which we obviously want to try to avoid. But that particular facility is not a problem geotechnically or with the groundwater, either one. So.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering, will they be chlorinated pools or salt water? And if it is passed, when do you anticipate it to be done?
I know the answer to the first question, but not the second one. So the question is, are they chlorinated or saltwater pools? And if the initiative passes, the LB 357 initiative passes on November 8th, when could we expect a facility like this to be completed?
We've gone through with our design team quite a bit about that question in regards to chlorination or salt water. Salt water was pretty popular in the past. However, based off some of the experiences that these facilities have had, chlorine has risen to the top again. From a cost-effectiveness stance, mostly with the components of the pool itself, with the pumps and with the filters and some of the regulations through the state, chlorine has proven to be a lot cheaper to operate. And so that's probably the direction that we are going to go. I'm not saying that with a lot of confidence as of right now, but that's the direction that we're headed from that perspective. As far as when it can be built, everybody's heard it, challenging times right now. With the regular schedule, I would tell you with the passing of the tax and getting the facility designed and actually constructed, I would tell you it'd be in the neighborhood of about 2 years once the tax is passed and once we can start implementing that tax. I'm doing a lot of projects right now where equipment is very difficult to get, and we're getting leeways of ridiculous, timeframes. So on a regular time scale, I'd tell you 2 years. But again, I hate to be too optimistic with where we're at.
So I just heard Dave personally guarantee that it'll be done in 2 years. No, I'm just kidding. I'm joking. I'm teasing. Was there a question over on this side? Yes, sir.
What do we know about the future of the old Albertsons?
Yeah, who's going to answer the question, I guess is what I was looking for, and then I'll repeat it. Nobody knows? Oh. So the question is, what have we heard about the future of the Albertsons building? I know that Nash Finch has a lease on it for another, in 2023. I do not anticipate a renewal of that lease by Nash Finch, is my understanding. But based on the lack of nods that I'm getting, I don't think we really know the answer to that question. But the facility is certainly not available currently. Does that answer your question? To the best of our abilities? Yeah, go ahead, Brad.
Operating one of these facilities is a major endeavor, not just operating it, but financing the operation of it. What are your thoughts in regard to that? How's that? Are we going to have to form an entity where you're partners?
Yeah.
Everyone owns a certain share? Or how is that going to work exactly?
You bet. So the question is, operation, maintenance, those costs, how do we envision that looking for a facility like this? And I might take a run answering this question, and then whoever feels that I'm not answering the question adequately can add their comments, because there's been a lot of conversation about that, Brad. And if you could bring up that community partners slide again, please. Yeah, it's a ways back. Sorry, I'm making it go all the way back. That one. So you can see on the top what I call, this is my term, 3 key community partners that I know have already been heavily engaged in this: City of Scottsbluff, Scottsbluff Public Schools, and the YMCA. And all of those 3 entities bring something to the table. Obviously, the City of Scottsbluff has, if this vote is approved, has the ability to levy funding source that's not available through any other methodology. This is not property tax, this is not income tax, this is sales tax, especially because of the unique role that the City of Scottsbluff plays even within the Panhandle, not just within our local community, the Panhandle as a retail hub. That tax, using that as a funding source, really shifts a lot of the burden of this cost to people that aren't living within Scottsbluff. And so that helps to pay for the construction. In terms of operation, though, the YMCA is the entity that's going to be operating the facility on a day-to-day basis. Hiring lifeguards, making sure the facility is safe, that the chemicals are put in properly, that all the different maintenance aspects are done. Obviously, Scottsbluff Public Schools, given not just the proximity, but its, our shared vision of involvement with children and educating them, would be heavily involved in the facility as well from a programming standpoint. And all three of those entities would bring something to the table as far as operating and maintenance contributions. We also anticipate those entities at the bottom, although I can't speak for them, being involved in some manner that would, again, help to fund those operating and maintenance. And so the city of Scottsbluff, this will be a city of Scottsbluff-owned facility. They'll have interlocal agreements with all of these different entities. There'll be some kind of entity formed that, and I've already been told the name of the entity, but I can't remember it right now, that would actually manage the facility, make sure that it had all those things. One thing that we haven't talked about at all, and we're trying not to rely on it in our estimates, is revenues. But there will be revenues generated by this. I mean, this would be a facility that would draw people to the area. It would bring dollars here. But we're trying not to be overly optimistic in those things and trying to more focus on how do we make sure we don't build a facility, this has already been mentioned, that outpaces everybody's ability to operate and provide maintenance for it. So that'd be broad strokes, and I don't know if anybody from the city or anybody else wants to add any comments to that. No? Yeah.
Excellent question, thank you. Near and dear to our hearts. We all subsidize an aquatics facility now, and in some form or another. And certainly our goal is to have a facility first that we can afford to pay with the LB $357 and afford to run long-term, because we don't want to repeat history. There's been some history in town, right, on some facilities that could not be maintained long-term. And so our goal as the YMCA is to cover our costs of operating it, that's a separate issue, and then our costs ongoing of the sinking fund, the O&M, whatever we want to call it, to not exceed what we contribute now, what it costs us now. And that's a pretty good trade-off, because we'd have a new, better facility for that same amount. We can afford what we do now, can we have a better facility and maintain that? That's the goal.
Oh, sorry, yes, please, sorry.
Brett, I'd like to add just real quick as well that the city, Liz and I and city managers have had extensive conversations about this this particular item. And from a design stance, and I think from a finance stance from the city, the impetus of this whole design is based off of O&M for the facility. And so that's been, I think we can afford to build it, but we want to make sure that we can take care of it. And that has been the main focus of the design and trying to implement outside of the box aspects of the design component to make sure we can generate revenue, additional revenue than what we're seeing today. I don't think we could build this facility and expect to operate it and keep a status quo perspective of it. So being able to design those components in that would be additional revenue generating has been a key conversation for as we move forward with this project. So I hope that kind of stands out a little bit from the tourism side, as well as providing another facility that can enhance some of the lifestyle that we have currently that will really push aquatics maybe towards the front of some of the things to do in the region as well. So.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Are there going to be outside parks or swimming options available?
You want to answer that? Okay. So the question was, will there be outside features or parks incorporated into this facility?
So the site design right now it's a 100% indoor facility. However, we're going to do our best during the final design process to try to make it have an outdoor feel, whether that be through more windows. Some of that plays into the efficiency and O&M of the facility as well. But one of the strong feelings from a lot of the group has been being able to have the open door concept. I don't know if you guys remember the old Splash Arena, but they did have a kind of that feel with the indoor pool, that you could open the doors, and I remember swimming there as a kid. There was just as many people swimming indoors as outdoors at that time. So with this facility, we're gonna try to accommodate probably some of the open door concepts, and then provide some space outside to be able to tan or lay out or be with your kids and do that kind of stuff. So the cost associated with outdoor pools is enormous. So everybody likes to swim outdoors. We're going to do our best to make that feel that way, but I'm not sure we'll be able to accommodate an outdoor pool.
So now I heard Dave commit to he and I tanning outside at the Aquatic Center, so I guess I'm hearing what I want to hear here, but, yes, sir. There we go.
Presently, what do you generate a year in 1.5% sales tax?
So we have a question from based on the sales tax, the amount that's going to be generated, and so I'll turn over to Liz from the city.
So our annual revenues for our existing sales tax are about 6 million a year. And so an additional half cent, we're conservatively, I would say 1.5 to 1.8 million. We've had some pretty high sales tax revenues these last 2 years. So when you look at all your 5 and 10-year averages, we're pretty comfortable with 1.5 to 1.8 million is what this will generate.
And just want to add to that, this is in support of another comment that Dave just made too. While that number is important, I can tell you that operations and maintenance costs drive the conversation of the design. Like, you know, we're not going to build a facility that we don't think can be supported. And the other thing I want to point out is that sales tax is only collected on discretionary items. There's a number of exemptions for food, medicine, things like that, so this doesn't change any of those exemptions. Melissa?
There was a question on the live stream that actually pertains to this, and the
Great.
question is, what is the cost, the estimated cost to staff and operate the facility?
Okay, question from our live stream. Thanks for another question from the internet about the cost of operating a facility, which I think Dave does have some numbers on that.
So as part of the design process and conceptualization of what you've seen today, the O&M for the facility and the footprint that's been presented is right at or just over $1 million a year. That does include a sinking fund for replacement parts and as well as a replacement pool aspect of it. So right now we're looking at an O&M cost of right over $1 million for what we're showing at this point anyways.
One of the issues here has been staffing with the YMCA as well as the Westmore pool because of the type of pool it is. At Westmore, it requires more people to staff, and I think in some summers it's been difficult to secure staffing to keep open. This I'm sure would require quite a bit of staff for all those different aspects. I guess what's the consideration as far as all the pools we have in the area and increasing and being able to keep staff?
You bet. And so the question's related to staffing and how we would staff the kind of lifeguards and care that would be provided for a facility like this, especially in comparison to some of the issues that I think everybody's aware of in maintaining those staffing levels are there. So I'm going to ask Conrad to answer that question.
Dave is really actually answering the question, but he just wanted to make me feel good about myself and be able to come up. We know that part of the design is to minimize the labor footprint at a max capacity. Using that entire facility is 4 lifeguards plus a manager on duty, which is significantly lower than Westmore. The YMCA right now is a private pool, is a Class B. So we have to have a lifeguard for every 25 participants in our pool area. And we have capacity, comfortable capacity of 100 in the lap pool and 25 in the therapy pool. I think our actual capacity is twice that, but it would be very uncomfortable. So, and a budget of around $450,000 a year to staff that. So, thanks, Dave.
It's definitely a part of the thought process, and that's one of the reasons that the YMCA is so engaged on managing this, because you're looking at now a year-round workforce as opposed to an 8-week or a 12-week workforce. So it just kind of changes the equation on, obviously there's a surge in those middle months, but it does change the equation there. These are great questions and comments. Other questions and comments? Yes, sir.
What are the fees going to be for participating or using the pool?
Yeah, so the question is related to the fees, and we've been very focused on the expense side of this, not on the revenue side, because we don't want any overly optimistic projections to kind of drive our mindset on the facility that we design. But again, where it is a public facility, there'll be public usage fees. I think Conrad mentioned this, because of the WISE involvement with it, we would anticipate some kind of access for our members. Our other community partners have also expressed that with their participation, that would indicate that their constituencies would have some kind of access. Some of those might be during dedicated hours, but those conversations are really ones that are happening throughout this summer. As we're kind of moving forward with honing in on who exactly those community partners are, what they're going to be able to contribute to this facility, what do those interlocal agreements look like. And so you're going to see in August, November, October, a lot more conversations about that as we approach the vote on November 8th. Our process all the way up until this point has been gathering feedback and with this town hall kind of educating on kind of where we're at and what we've heard from people. But we continue to hone in on the answer to that question, which is what kind of revenues do we see out of that? And a lot of that's going to depend on our community partners and the contributions they want to make.
Have they said what the age of the gearing pool is, how much longer they foresee it to be viable?
Yeah, so the question is, what is the age of the gearing pool? And I do not, excuse me, it was mentioned at one of our community partner meetings. I don't recall it, Kristen. My recollection is that they've said within the next 5 to 7 years, they have some significant cost to repair it. I want to say that it's a pool that's from the 60s or the 70s. So I mean, it's just as old, if not older, than some of the other facilities. But it has some similar issues in a similar time frame. Other comments and questions? I noticed there's a few people that are in attendance that haven't made a comment or asked a question, which obviously that's okay. But is there anybody and it can be a comment too. It doesn't have to be. I know all of what we've had up to this point is questions, but is there any comments or any feedback that you have about the presentation? Other than we went too fast? Yes, sir. Yep, you bet. So the question is what on this, in fact, is on this slide, what are the things that are on kind of the north side of that? And so I'll ask Dave of Dave's presentations to come up.
That's a great question, and a lot of the community feedback we got as part of the surveys even is you'll see that there's a big need for party space and for recreational space outside of the pool itself. So what you're seeing there is locker rooms for the competitive side. You'll see a men's and women's locker rooms. Kind of the trend right now is getting away from set aside men's and women's locker room for the public, but maybe more towards what they're showing here is cabanas, so more family-oriented spaces to where they're separate rooms. So when you bring your family, you're not trying to change your 3-year-old in a chaotic locker room space. So the newer concepts accommodate some of that, what you're seeing there on kind of that upper left-hand side. But the party rooms and then the maintenance and the equipment space is what really drives a lot of that non-aquatic usage. So.
Sorry.
Looking out there a little bit, but Torrington has had students participate in our swim teams and swimming in the past. Does anyone know? Torrington doesn't have an indoor facility. I can see that this would have a regional drop where you bend some things, unless they have anything on the horizon for adding pools or anything.
Right. Yeah, so great question. Questions about Torrington in terms of, their kind of past involvement in aquatics and potential future. And I'd actually like to expand your question to broader than that. There's nothing about what we're doing or the conversations we're having that says that another community can't come in and be a part of this, whether that's Mitchell, Morrill, Bayard, Kimball, Torrington, it just doesn't matter. But we're very focused on the entities that we've talked to, that have talked to us about wanting to be involved as far as these initial stages. But there's nothing about this that we won't be able to add in other parties as they want to be a part of that. And we've engaged a lot of different community partners on this. And so we've just kind of been focused on Scottsbluff, Gehring, this area, some of these entities. And I think, if we can move forward with this, especially if we get through November 8th, which is the vote on the LB 357, I think that's when you'll see other communities also want to be a part of something like this when they see that it's going to move forward. Melissa.
There is a question from the live stream, probably for Dave. If someone would like to have some explanation on what diving options will be available with the proposed design.
Okay, so the question is from our online attendees about what diving facilities or capacity can we expect at this facility?
So right now, the competition pool will be the dive well for what we're expecting, and mostly because that would be part of the swim team. The diving, is it 1 or 1.5 meter? I can't remember, is what the state competitions are for high school. It's 1.5, that's what I was thinking as well. So right now, we're showing 2 1.5 meter dive pools, or diving boards. If we go any higher with that from a diving board stance, then it really changes the geometrics of the pool. And based off competition styles and where we are at today with just the state competition at the high school level, we would expect to stick at the 1.5 meter springboard dive well. So that would be the diving component of it.
Great opportunity to bring up another component of this that was mentioned previously, which is the diving well. And the year-round nature of the facility will enable public safety training to happen whenever, not just during those summer months when those facilities are open, those outdoor facilities. Okay, other comments or questions? We can go past 7 o'clock, it's okay. Everybody has had a snack, so we can keep going if you want to. Other comments, questions? Any other from our community partners here? Yes, yes ma'am.
I just want to commend you and thank you for your endeavors because I think this is really needed. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I really want to thank everybody for coming here. Whatever your involvement or engagement is on this, we really appreciate the level of engagement that we've seen. You saw it in the community survey, 1,000 responses to that. We've gotten a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls. We have a lot of people participating online as well. We have 2 more town halls, and you're welcome to come back to those. We wanted to, again, while we're still gathering this community feedback and input, we want to really maximize that. And so we've got 2 more town halls at noon and at 6 p.m., both on May 31st. So just about a little more than 1 week out. I want to thank Scottsbluff Public Schools for allowing us to use this facility, as it's worked very well, and I hope you agree with that. And also, again, want to thank Melissa Price for her help. And I want to remind you that I'm representing Vote Yes for Scottsbluff Aquatics, which is a group of citizen-led group of individuals that is working to educate and promote about the November 8th vote on the City of Scottsbluff ballot about LB 357 sales tax. So thank you again for coming. I know our community partners will still be here for a bit, so feel free to come up to any of us and ask questions. Thanks again for attending online.